Here's a quick preview of what we're going to be doing in this video. I'm going to create a React app, upload it to S3, set up a DNS, create a certificate in a Cloudfront distribution, and verify everything works. What is going on, guys? I recently made a video on the top practical projects to learn AWS, and one of those items was S3 static hosting to host a React app using AWS S3 and Cloudfront. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. I'm going to show you how to set up a React application that is hosted on S3 via Cloudfront as a distribution. It's going to involve creating some certificates and also some Route 53 DNS modifications. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So just to kind of set the context in terms of what this is going to look like, I have this brief little diagram here, and I have one variation without Cloudfront and another one that I'm just hiding for a moment here that contains Cloudfront. And we're going to be doing both in this video. I'm going to show you how to do so. Now, you may be asking yourself, why would I want to use Cloudfront? Why would I not want to use Cloudfront? Cloudfront is just caching, improves performance. And one important advantage of using Cloudfront is that it allows you to have HTTPS on your website. So that means a secure connection, and that means no ugly, this website is insecure warning going to your visitors of visiting your website. So yeah, this is what we're going to be doing. So we're going to create a very simple React app. It's just going to be all default stuff. Then we're going to upload that content into S3, and then we're going to mess with the DNS settings in Amazon Route 53. And then after that, we're going to basically be able to go to my website and view that React application. So once we do that and get that set up properly, we're going to do the next variation, which is a little bit more difficult. So it includes caching with Cloudfront. So what we're going to have to do there is same kind of pieces, except we now have Cloudfront here. So what's going to happen is React is going to point to a DNS entry on Route 53. That's going to point to our Amazon Cloudfront distribution, and that is going to point to our S3 bucket, which contains our website files. And we're also going to have to set up a certificate, which I'm going to show you how to do, and wire it up so that it's connected to your Cloudfront distribution. So that's what we got going on. I'm going to head over into the console now and get started. So here we go. All right, guys, so here we are in the AWS console. Now, the first thing that we need to do is just set up the scaffolding for a very basic React application. So I'm just going to do that via PowerShell. So just create a temporary directory, something that you're going to remember for this project. And then we're going to just say npx create React app, and then you can just call this thing anything you want. I'm going to call it demo app. And this is going to download a bunch of files depending on your internet connection. It may be slower or faster, then it's going to install everything it needs. So if this takes too long, I'm just going to fast forward it for you. So bear with me here. All right, so that finally finished. Took a little bit longer than I thought. So let's test this thing out just to show you what we're going to be deploying. So let's just cd into the directory with the application, cd demo app, and let's just say npm start, and that should launch up our React app here just to show you. There it is. Okay, so this is what we're going to be deploying to our S3 website. Okay, and so let's close that out because we don't actually need it anymore. But before we go to the console, I just wanted to show you the next step, which is going to basically bundle all those files together so that they can be deployed to a production environment. It's actually this command right here. So npm run build. So I'm just going to do Control-C to terminate this. Yes. And we're going to say npm run build. And like I said, that's going to batch everything up into some static files here. This may take a moment or so. And while it's doing that, I'm just going to bring up my file explorer just to show you kind of what's going on. We can see here that this just completed, but let's just take a look at what it actually did. So here we are in demo app. Now we have a build folder, and inside this, it's got our index.html. It's got the icon that we're using, manifest robots.txt, also our static content, so CSS. It's also got our JavaScript, and it's also got any media or image files that you need for this application. Okay, so that's all we really need to do here. So now we can go over to the console finally and perform our first step, which is to create the bucket. So go ahead and close this terminal out now. You don't actually need it anymore. So here we are in the console. I'm going to go to the top and just click, or just type S3 rather. I'm going to click on S3. Now, There we go. So you can see here I don't have any buckets. I've never created any buckets on this account yet. So we're going to actually create 2 different buckets for this website, or this project rather. The first one is our website name without www in front of it. So let me just show you really quick. So the website we're going to be making is awssimplified.io. You can see when I went to this website, you know, there's nothing happening. So no such bucket, nothing is working here. So we're going to have a bucket for awssimplified.io and a bucket for www.awssimplified.io. And the reason that we need both is because one of them is going to basically be the authority. So it's going to have all of our content in it. And the other is going to be basically for redirect. So when someone goes to that website, it's going to redirect us to the other version. Now you can set this up so that when someone goes to www, it redirects you to the normal version, or you can do the opposite. So when someone sends you, when someone goes to awssimplified.io, it redirects you to www. The choice is yours, but for this project, I'm going to make it so that the non-www forwards to the www. So if that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. It's going to be clear in a little bit here. So the first thing that we're going to do is just create the bucket. So click on create bucket here. So I like to name this what my website domain is. So I'm going to say awssimplified.io. And I'm going to select the region that's closest to me, which is US East 1. One thing that we're going to need to do, actually, I'm going to leave this as default. We're going to have to disable this later, but we're going to go through the command outside of the creation wizard here, just to show you a little bit more detail. Just going to leave everything else as default now. You don't need to touch any of this stuff, and go ahead and click on create bucket. All right, perfect. So the bucket was created. Let's just close that out really quick. So let's just create our second bucket now, which is going to be the exact same thing, just without the www at the front. So go back to create bucket. Just a side note here, it looks as if I'm creating the same bucket twice, but this is because of a recording issue. Just make sure you create 2 identical buckets, one with www and one without. And just type in the name here, so awssimplified.io. By the way, make sure that the name of the bucket is exactly what the name of your website is going to be, both the www version and the non-www version, or else you're probably going to have some problems at a later step in this video. So scroll down again, we're going to go ahead and click on create bucket once more. And now we have 2 buckets here. So that's perfect. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to our www, and we are going to upload the files that we just created as part of that React project. So I'm going to go ahead and click on upload now. And in this screen here, I'm going to go and click on add files. And I'm going to just navigate to the build directory of our React application here. And I'm just going to select all the individual files on their own. And then we're going to add the folder for static, because that contains some of the static content, such as the JavaScript and the images and everything. So go ahead and click on that, and then click on add folder once more. And we're just going to click on the static folder, click on upload. And if you're on a Mac, it's pretty much the same thing. I don't think I have to explain that for people. And then once everything is set up here, you should just see a very basic preview. Go all the way down to the bottom, leave everything as default, and we're just going to click on upload. We should get a prompt progress screen thing here. Yeah, so it's showing us the progress of our upload as it's going into S3. Okay, so once that is all complete, what we need to do is just enable some settings, some public settings for our bucket. So I'm going to go to back to the bucket itself. So clicking on buckets over here, click on our www bucket, and then we're going to click on permissions. We're going to scroll down a little bit here, and we got to do 2 things. So the first thing is we need to disable this. We need to disable block public access. You can see here that it's on by default for all. And the reason this is the case is basically because it didn't always used to be this way, by the way. But basically too much data was being leaked from customers that are using AWS, including some very high profile companies with sensitive data on their customers. So now by default, everything is blocked, and it's very explicit that everything is blocked, as you can see through this text here. So we're just going to click on edit here and just disable this guy, and that should disable everything here. So this bucket after this and one more incremental change will be public after. So go ahead and click on save changes. And because we're making our bucket public, it's just showing us a warning message here to ask us if we're sure that we actually want to make it public. And you just have to type in confirm here just to make that go away. Go ahead and click on confirm, and now you can see here everything is off, so that is good. The next thing we want to do is go to the bucket policy section, and here what we need to do is we need to paste a policy itself, or we can do this another manual way. I'm just going to show you the easy way, which is just pasting a string in here basically. Okay, so what you need to do is come here and just paste this sucker in here. I'm going to leave this policy document in the description section of this video, so you don't have to copy it out of this thing. That would be ridiculous. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see as well. So this is just saying we want to allow basically anyone to call the S3 get object API on our bucket. Now make sure that when you paste this in, you change this string here, www.awssimplified.io, to be whatever your website is. So if it's foobar.com, you'd put www.foobar.com. Make sure you also have the /* as well. That's very, very important, or else you're going to fail at a later step in this video. So once you have that, go ahead and click on Save Changes, and basically everything is good now. We are publicly accessible. So if we go to our objects in this bucket and we go to the index.html page and we find the object URL over here, and I just open up a tab and open this sucker up, you can see here React app is loading up, but when we actually go over here, it's not loading the whole content. That's just because it's just loading this file index.html and not the whole like application with the CSS and the JavaScript and all that. When we set up the DNS settings, which is one of the later steps, you're going to see like that welcome to React logo thing, and everything's going to work perfectly. So don't worry that this isn't working, at least in its current form, but we can tell here from now at least that the bucket is public. We're able to access all the files, which is what we wanted to do as part of this step. So that's good. Close that out. We're going to go back to the just S3 section, and we're going to make some minor modifications on this bucket as well. We need to actually enable static website hosting on the www one. So go to properties, and again, we're going to scroll all the way down, and there should be a section, there it is, for static website hosting. And you can see by default, it is disabled. We want to change that obviously. So let's go to edit, and we're going to change this to enable. Now there's two options that you see here, host a static website or redirect request for an object. Now, since this is the bucket where we actually uploaded all the content, it's going to be the host for the static website. We're actually going to go to that other bucket that we created earlier, and we're going to set it to redirect to this bucket. So that's how it's going to work. When someone goes or tries to navigate to the other bucket, they're going to redirect to the www version, just so that we don't have to keep two copies of our data in two separate buckets. But we're going to add the flexibility so that when people go to the non-www, it redirects them to the correct one. So keep that on host a static website. We need to set our index document. The convention is index.html, and that is the name of the file for our index on the create React app, just default. So we're just going to type in index.html, and we're going to leave everything as default, or everything blank basically, and go ahead and click on Save Changes now. So basically at this point, this website is ready to go. If you still try to go to AWSsimplified.io, this still obviously isn't going to work because we need to do some extra steps. Now the first extra step is do that redirect thing that I was just talking about. So go to back to buckets. We're going to click on the non-www version, and we are going to go to properties. We're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom again, and static website hosting, and we're going to click on edit. We are going to enable static website hosting, and we're going to set it to redirect request for an object. I'm going to click on that guy, and the host name is going to be the name of our other bucket. So it was www.awssimplified.io. And for now, we're going to set this as HTTP, but we're going to, in the later steps when we use Cloudfront, we're going to actually come back here and set this to HTTPS so we can get security on our website. So go ahead and click on Save Changes now. So that is everything that we need to do from S3 perspective for now. This is how it should look in the console, a page like this. And just as a recap, we have all of our content in the www bucket. Okay, so that is it now for the S3 portion. Let's go over to Route 53 where we need to make some modifications. So I'm just going to leave S3 open for now. I'm going to duplicate this guy, duplicate. And we are going to go to Route 53 by typing in Route 53 up here. And this is basically where we set our domain registration or domain settings so that they point, when someone tries to go to my website, it's going to point to that actual index.html and load up our website and everything. Now, in this video, I already have a domain that I registered in a prior video, and I'm going to give you the link down in the bottom to follow along with setting that up. That video contains how to hook everything up with Lightsail and how to register a domain and set it up with Lightsail. But don't follow the Lightsail part of that video. Just follow the part where I actually create the domain. What you're going to get after you follow that is basically where I'm starting right now. So if you see here, if we go to register domains, we should see, yeah, so my website or my domain is registered here. If you have a website or a domain that's hosted somewhere else, like GoDaddy, you can still do all this stuff. You just have to use their UI console. And I'm not going to give you a lesson on how to do that. I'm going to run with the assumption that you have everything set up in AWS, which is probably going to be the majority of people. So let's go back to dashboard. And I'm going to click on hosted zone now. And we're going to click on our hosted zone for our domain, awssimplify.io. And this is what you should see as default. When you initially create your domain, you should have two records that exist for both for awssimplify.io. One is namespace and another one is SOA. I believe it's something of authority. I can't remember I always forget what this acronym stands for. Maybe someone can correct me or let me know in the comments. So what we need to do is create two different records so that when someone tries to hit our website, awssimplify.io or www in this case, they're going to get forwarded to the S3 bucket's content. So that's what we need to do here. And in order to do that, we need to click on this button here, create record. And we're actually going to create two different records, one for the www and one for the vanilla one. Now, if you don't see this fancy screen that's got a wizard in front of you here, there's a different option. You can go switch to quick create. It's a more advanced view. I kind of like the wizard just because I like it to hold my hand. So that's what we're going to do. Leave this as simple routing. We're going to go to next here, and we're going to define a simple record. Okay, so for the first one, we're going to set this up for the www first, and we're going to leave this on A. And when we choose endpoint, there should be a section for S3. So there it is. So alias to S3 website endpoint. It's going to ask us to choose a region. This needs to be whatever region you set up your bucket in the first place. Recall I showed you how to do that when you were creating your bucket. Mine was US East 2. Where is US East 2? Or US East 1 it was rather. And then we got to choose our bucket, and then there it is, www.awssimplify.io. And we are going to disable evaluate target health, since this is only really relevant when you have a host behind the scenes, and we're just using S3 for this case. We're going to say define simple record. We're not going to click on create records yet. I want to define another one, which is going to be for our non-www version. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Leave this as default here. I don't think you actually have to put anything in here. Leave that as A, and we're going to go to S3 again, and aliases again. So US East 1, just typing that in this time, it's a little quicker. Choosing our bucket, and then we're basically good to go. So define simple record. So this is what you should see after you've done this. So you should see the www and the non-www. They should both be pointing to an S3 location here. We're going to go ahead now and click on create records here in the bottom right. And we should see now that the records were successfully created. That's fantastic. And when we scroll down, we should see two different entries, one for awssimplify.io with A, and that's pointing to S3, and another one for www.awssimplify.io, and that's also pointing to S3. Now, keep in mind, this isn't instant. Sometimes it takes up to, I believe they say 60 seconds for AWS, but it can take quite a while for DNS settings to get refreshed and propagated to all the hosts on the public internet. So let's see if this was quick or if it was slow. So I'm going to open up a new tab here, and I'm going to go to awssimplify.io. And let's see if this works. We can see something is spinning here. Oh, there we go. So we can see it refresh pretty quickly. So that's great. And again, if we try to go to, actually you can notice here, it forwarded me to the www version. So I don't know if you noticed that, but it's kind of nifty. That's basically what the effect was of setting up that second bucket and setting up that redirect. And so if we do www now.awssimplified.io, we should see here that it's still got the www in it, which is perfect. So at this point, you are basically good to go for a very basic public facing website. You can get this working. You can start serving customers if you want. Now do note that we have this big, ugly, not secure thing up here, and this looks terrible. In fact, if you're on some school networks or you're even on a work network, a lot of them block websites that aren't HTTPS secured, which is what this thing basically means. Now, if you're using just S3 for your website hosting and not Cloudfront, then you can't get around this. You have to set up Cloudfront to get HTTPS enabled if you're using S3 for static website hosting. So if you don't care, you can just go from here, but I would suggest you don't do that and you proceed with the next step. If you use Cloudfront, you're going to get better performance because it's going to cache your data at edge endpoints that are basically located all around the world. So you're going to get great performance for your customers regardless of where they're accessing your website from. And by the way, if this didn't work right away or it's taking like an egregiously long time, try to open up a private browser because your browser can cache results and it could be serving you stale data. So just try that out or just wait like half an hour, go grab a coffee or something like that and come back. Okay, so that is pretty much it for the basic part, or the first option that I showed you at the part of the video, which is just basic hosting with S3 static websites and Route 53. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is set up our Cloudfront distribution. And in order to do that, we have need to do a prerequisite step, which is to set up our certificate so that we can have HTTPS enabled. So I'm just going to go to the certificate manager section of AWS and click on this guy. And we're going to go to the bottom here where it says provision certificates and click on get started. We're going to leave this as request a public certificate and just click on that blue button there in the bottom right. And in this domain name section, this is where you need to put in some details. So we need to put in the domain name. So www.awssimplified.io. And we also want to add another name, which is our non-www version. So just say awssimplified.io. And if you have any other like subdomains or anything else you want to associate with this certificate, you can go ahead and do that there. Once you have done that, go ahead and click on next. And you have two options here for validation. The first way is through DNS. And essentially what AWS is asking you to do is to prove that you are the owner of this domain. Now, arguably, it should probably already know that you're the owner because we have the domain, but it asks you to do this extra step here. It does make it pretty easy to use DNS validation over email, and I'll show you in just a second on how to do that. So let's leave that as default for DNS. Go ahead and click on next right now. And you can leave tag name as default here, and we're going to go to review. Okay, so just giving us a quick little summary here. So let's say confirm and request. And it's asking us here, or it's telling us rather, that we have some pending validation here. So we haven't done anything yet to modify those DNS settings. And there's a very quick hand way to do that, to just approve to AWS that you're the owner and complete this process. So you're going to want to click on this guy here, the little triangles for both of them. And you see here that we have two different records, DNS records that it's asking us to go and insert. Now you can go ahead and go to the Route 53 console, similar to how we just did it for the A record, and just add an entry here for this one. It's of type CNAME and the value is this. And the same thing for this guy down here. Alternatively, a much easier way is to just click these blue buttons here and they're going to automatically do it for you. So I'm just going to click those blue buttons. I'm going to click on create. It's going to say success, fantastic. I'm going to click on this guy here. I'm going to click on create as well, fantastic. And it should take a little bit of time for this to switch from pending validation to the next step. But let's click on continue for now. And we can see here now that it's still pending validation. This often takes a few minutes. While we're waiting, let's just go and look at Route 53 to show you that those new entries are actually there. So let's go to Route 53 now, and everything worked correctly. We should see two new records with CNAME under our domain name. And if we scroll down, there they are. So the first one, A5EC, the second one, E47, and these are two different CNAMEs that are pointing to this certificate. So that's good. Everything was set up correctly here for the DNS. It's going to close that out now. Let's just refresh this and see if this finished. There we go. So it changed to issued, which means that everything is successful so far. If we just expand the triangle again, we can now see this is on success and everything is groovy. All right, so at this point, everything is done with the certificate section. We can go actually into Cloudfront now to actually set up the regional distribution, which is gonna do two things: set up caching and also allow us to enable HTTPS. And before we do that, I just wanted to show you something before we do the Cloudfront portion. I'm going to go back to our website here, awssimplify.io. I'm going to pull up the console here, and I'm just going to refresh this guy. And I want you to take a look at what we have down here. So when I go to the record for www and I click on this guy, I want you to note that in the response, the server is Amazon S3. So in fact, the content that is being served right now is coming from S3. And this is going to change to Cloudfront later once we set up the distribution, which is why I wanted to tell you about it right now. So just keep this in mind. We're going to come here later and it's going to show something like Cloudfront or something along those lines. Okay, so let's close that out and duplicate this sucker. And we want to go to Cloudfront now. Okay, let me just get notes ready. All right, so perfect. Let's go to create distribution now, and we're going to click on get started. All right, so we need to add something here for origin domain name. Now, unfortunately, when you click on this, it actually gives you the wrong autocomplete values or things that aren't appropriate for our use case. So what you need to do, instead of clicking these guys, don't click these guys. What you want to do is you want to go back to S3, go to the bucket well, actually, we're going to have to do this twice, one for www, one for the other distribution. But let's start with the www one. We're going to click on that guy, go to properties, scroll all the way down to the bottom to the section for static website hosting. And then this is the link that we want to put in for our origin domain name. So we want to actually grab this, click on this little checkbox thing here, copy that up and put that under origin domain name. That's actually what we want to copy here. Okay, so once you've done that, the other setting that we need to change is viewer protocol policy. And we want to change this from supporting both HTTPS and HTTPS to redirect HTTP to HTTPS. So what that means in layman's terms is that when someone goes to HTTP, automatically they're going to get forwarded to the secure version of the website. And that's exactly what we want to make sure everyone is on HTTPS. Okay, so that's good for now, and we need to go down to the section for alternate CNAMEs here. And for the first one, we're just going to put in www.awssimplify.io. And now we need to select our certificate. So go ahead and click on Custom SSL Certificate, and it should autocomplete with the certificate that we created in the prior step. So go ahead and click on that certificate. And that's pretty much it for this web page. So you can leave everything else as default here. Nothing really needs to change. We're going to go ahead and click on create distribution. Make sure you're starting it in the distribution state of enabled, or else it's not going to work. So click on create distribution. Okay, so you can see here now that there's an in progress state. Often this takes quite a bit of time for this to actually get enabled and start working correctly. So hopefully when we get through the other step, which is the second distribution, everything will be set up correctly. So we're going to do the same thing now for the other version, which is the non-www. So go ahead and click on create distribution, get started, origin domain name. We need to go back to S3, go to buckets, go to this guy, go to properties, scroll all the way down to the bottom and grab this thing. Go back to Cloudfront, paste that into the domain name. And then basically everything else is the same here. We need to change the same stuff. Yeah, there we go. So change this to redirect as well, HTTP to HTTPS. And then we need to go to alternate domain names. Now for this one, this is our non-www. So I'm just putting awssimplified.io here. We're using our custom SSL certificate. Make sure you click this little box here so that it actually respects that. And then that's pretty much it here. So we're going to go ahead and click on create distribution at this point. All right, cool. So now both of these things are actually being distributed to Cloudfront. And once this is all done, our traffic that is destined for awssimplify.io will be served through Cloudfront that is backed by the assets that are in S3. But there's one more small step, which is to enable HTTPS redirect for our non-www version of the website. So what we need to do is Actually, we need to change some A records as well. I forgot actually. So that'll be the second step. So let's go back to S3 really quick, and let's go to buckets, and let's go to the redirect one, or the one without the www. We're going to click on that guy. We're going to go to properties again and scroll all the way down to the bottom, and we're going to click on under static website hosting. Go ahead and click on edit, and we're going to change the protocol to HTTPS. Okay, so go ahead and click on Save Changes now. And this is going to set us up nicely for the next step. Now, by the way, I want to go back to CloudFront really quick. If you look here under domain name and you highlight this, this is the domain name in which the website is actually serving content from. So if I actually open up my browser, assuming this is all distributed and working correctly, if it is, we should see my app. There we go, right? So it's showing my application. But obviously this is wrong. It shouldn't show like blah, 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 .cloudfront.net. We want it to be awssimplified.net. So what we need to do is go change our DNS settings to actually do that, so that we can map users to this destination when they visit awssimplified.io under the hood, but it'll still show us as awssimplified.io. Basically, we're making the source as CloudFront, but we're still going to have the domain name that we originally wanted. And just to show you how this is different from that prior step, if we refresh this guy, and we look at the response here, you can see that it is coming from S3, but via CloudFront. So that's how we know that this is indeed coming from CloudFront. So that's good. The next thing that we need to do now is go and change our DNS settings. We need to change some A records to actually point to this distribution. So make sure that you have your CloudFront tab open and you have your Route 53 tab open, because you're going to be flipping between them back and forth. So go to, actually we don't need S3 anymore, so I'm just going to go to Route 53 and go to that guy and go to hosted zone and click on my domain name there. And now we are going to modify our A records. Instead of pointing directly to S3, they're going to point to our CloudFront distribution, and our CloudFront distribution is going to point to S3. So that's how this whole thing changes. So let's start with the www one like we always do. So I'm actually going to tick this and this at the same time. I think it lets me modify. No, okay, that's fine. We're just going to do this one by one. So wait, how do you do this? Edit record. There we go. And so we need to change this to our CloudFront distribution. So leave everything default here. Instead of being an alias to S3 website endpoint, we're going to change this to CloudFront distribution. And the option that comes up as autocomplete is going to be the one that's associated with www. But let's just confirm that. So this one is D1JW is what it's suggesting. If we go back to CloudFront and we look at this is the www one, we see it is indeed correct, D1J. And we're going to go ahead and click on save now. And we're going to do that exact same thing for the non version of www, which is this one here. I'm going to click on edit record. We're going to change this from pointing to S3 to pointing to, where is it? CloudFront. And again, it's going to suggest us a different one. So DKILC. Let's just double check that really quick. DKILC, that looks good. And we're going to go ahead and click on save now. Okay, so the DNS portion of this task is complete. Let's go and just check on our CloudFront distribution to see how it's doing. We can see now it's in a fully deployed state, which is perfect. So let's go and actually test to see if everything is working. So I'm going to open up a fresh tab here. Let's go to www, there it is, .awssimplified.io. And everything is perfect. If you notice now, keep in mind, we are using HTTPS. You see the lock here. We're saying connection is secure. We have a valid certificate, which is fantastic. And if you press F12, if you're on Chrome, by the way, pressing F12 brings up the console. Can't remember what it is for Firefox. But if you refresh this guy now, and I remember what I told you in the beginning when we originally looked at this, I asked you to look at this and say, note that it's coming back from S3. Well, now we're on awssimplified.io, and I click on this sucker. And if you look here, it's coming from S3, but via CloudFront, and now our domain name is correct. So everything is working, and let's just try this without the www version. It should forward us to the www version if everything was set up correctly. And there we go. It forwarded us to that. And we can see that it is actually happening as per the network logs here. We originally went to awssimplify.io and it redirected us to www.awssimplify.io. Now, just before I close this out, I just wanted to give you a pro tip. Now, if you're using this to change your website content regularly, keep in mind that there's caches enabled with Cloudfront. So if you change your website or like redeploy or something like that, it may not show up right away. Now, if you want it to show up right away, you basically need to nuke your Cloudfront distribution and get it to re-pull all the resources from S3. And the way that you can do that is you go back to Cloudfront and click on, I don't know if you can do both of them at the same time, but maybe. We're going to do this one by one, maybe. So go to distribution settings and go to invalidations. And then you want to create an invalidation. And this is basically going to clear Cloudfront of everything that it has cached on your S3 bucket and re-pull it from S3 and start caching it again. So the way that you do that is you just click on that and you can just clear everything. So you just say /* and that should clear everything. I think actually it's /*//. So that's essentially saying every subdirectory and every file within that subdirectory. Click on invalidate and it's going to clear everything out. And when you refresh the page after this process is all done, you should see your fresh new content. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you found it useful. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you next time.